So back when London won the bid for the 2012 Olympics, it promised way more than just a summer of amazing sports. It promised to take one of its most forgotten, neglected corners and turn it into something incredible. This is the story of Stratford's massive gamble, a story of unbelievable change, huge ambition, and, well, some very real consequences.
And to really get a sense of the scale here, this comparison says it all. I mean, just look. On one side, you've got the before picture, a post-industrial wasteland, right? We're talking derelict factories, polluted land, you name it. And on the other, the after, a shiny, global destination with world-class stadiums, massive parks, and tech parks. The transformation is absolutely staggering.
So naturally, this brings up a couple of massive questions that we're going to dig into. First off, how on earth did they pull this off? How did this transformation even happen? And second, once all the confetti settled and the medals were handed out, who really benefited from this enormous urban renewal project?
To really understand the Olympic dream, you first have to get a handle on the reality that came before it. So let's rewind the clock a bit and take a look at Stratford's past and trace its journey from this industrial powerhouse to, well, a pretty forgotten part of London.
You know, if you go way back to the 19th century, this place was buzzing. The River Lea was its engine, powering all these factories, making everything from chemicals to ships. But then, as the 20th century moved on, things changed. Global trade shifted, the old industries just couldn't keep up, and one by one, the factories started to shut their doors. Fast forward to the early 2000s, and the decline was pretty much complete. Stratford had become one of the most deprived areas in the entire UK.
And the problems, man, they were deep. We're talking sky-high unemployment because thousands of jobs had just vanished. Huge areas of land were just left to rot, totally derelict. The ground itself was literally toxic from decades of industrial gunk, and the rivers were a mess. It was, a textbook case of post-industrial decay.
But here's the twist. Buried in all that decay was some serious potential. You see, all those closed-down factories left behind these massive plots of open land, which is like gold dust in a city like London. And this is the key. Stratford already had great train and tube links right into the city centre. It was basically a huge blank canvas with a direct line to the heart of the capital.
And you better believe people noticed this potential. The government saw this as a golden opportunity, right? A once-in-a-generation shot to use the Olympic Games as the engine for one of the most ambitious regeneration projects Europe had ever seen. This was it. This was Stratford's £9 billion gamble.
And let's just let that number sink in for a second. £9 billion. This wasn't just about building a few cool stadiums for a few weeks of sport. This was a commitment to completely remake an entire district of London from the ground up.
So what was the big sales pitch? What were they promising for all that cash? Well, the goals were huge. They said they'd clean up the environment, create thousands of new long-term jobs, build amazing facilities that everyone could use for years, and, this was the big one, leave a lasting legacy that would directly benefit the people who already called Stratford home. And you know what? In a lot of ways, the project delivered some spectacular results. So let's take a look at the good stuff, the tangible, positive changes that came out of this huge investment, the shiny after picture that emerged from all the dust.
This is where you can really see that legacy idea in action. The Olympic Media Center, it wasn't torn down. It became Here East, this massive hub for tech and creative companies, creating thousands of jobs. A polluted brownfield site is now Westfield Stratford City, one of the biggest shopping centers in Europe. The Athletes' Village was turned into East Village, a whole new neighborhood with about 3,000 homes. And on what was just derelict land, they built Chobham Academy, a brand new school for the community. Pretty smart, right?
The environmental change was just as mind-blowing. They literally dug up and cleaned tons of contaminated soil. The polluted rivers and canals were brought back to life. And in their place, you now have beautiful parkland with thousands and thousands of new trees. They even built new habitats to bring wildlife like otters and kingfishers back to the area. I mean, what a turnaround.
But, and this is a huge but, this gleaming new version of Stratford came at a price. For every success story we just talked about, there's a flip side, a price that was paid by some of the people who were there from the very beginning.
You see, while the big promise was new jobs, the first thing that actually happened was job losses. About 5,000 jobs disappeared when existing local businesses and factories were cleared out to make way for the Olympic Park. It's a stark number, and one you don't always hear about.
And it wasn't just jobs that were lost. It was homes. The human cost was very real. Entire housing estates,
Places like Clay's Lane, where communities had existed for generations, they were just demolished. Residents were forced to pack up and leave their neighborhoods to make way for all the new development.
And this all feeds into this one really important idea: gentrification. You hear the word thrown around a lot, but it means something specific. It's what happens when an area gets improved so much that property prices and the general cost of living just shoot through the roof. And what happens then? Well, the original residents, often on lower incomes, simply can't afford to live there anymore. They get pushed out.
And in Stratford, that's exactly what critics say went down. Property prices absolutely soared. All the new apartments, the shiny new shops, the trendy restaurants, they were expensive, and they were catering to a whole new, wealthier crowd. And the end result, many of the long-term residents found themselves priced out of their own home, which completely changed the makeup of the community.
So, after all that, where do we land? What's the final verdict on Stratford's Olympic makeover? Well, the truth is, it's complicated. It's really a story of two very different cities, a legacy that is packed with contrast.
On the one hand, you absolutely cannot deny the successes. You've got new jobs in tech and retail, thousands of new homes, a much cleaner environment, and fantastic public facilities. But on the other hand, the criticisms are just as powerful. Original jobs were lost, residents were displaced, and a wave of gentrification made the area unaffordable for many of the people it was supposed to help.
And that's really the bottom line here. No one can argue that Stratford wasn't transformed. It absolutely was. The physical change is incredible, but the question of who that transformation was truly for, and who really benefited the most from that £9 billion gamble, well, that is still a fierce and really important debate.
And that leaves us with a final thought, one that goes way beyond East London. As cities all over the world plan these huge, ambitious regeneration projects, the story of Stratford kind of forces us all to ask a really fundamental question. When we rebuild a place, who are we really building it for?